At Connecticut. He is staying at Yukon, and we are live with breaking news reaction here on the Field of 68. John Fanta, Jeff Goodman, Rob Doster here. Just reported just moments ago, Hurley turning down the Lakers' offer, 6 years, $70 million. He wants to run it back at Yukon. He is staying in the Northeast. He is staying in Stores to pursue a three-peat. Rob Doster, your immediate reaction.
I just want to make it clear to everyone that when you write the word three-peat, it's always got to have the number 3 with a hyphen and then the word P-E-A-T. It's not, you don't spell out 3. You put the number 3 and then P-E-A-T. I just want to make that clear. We're going to have a lot of conversations about it. We're going to be talking about three-peats. It's probably going to end up happening because that's all Yukon done is go out and win championships, right, Goodman? But yeah, he's back, man. I think, look, in all seriousness, okay, I think that this is an incredible thing for the sport of college basketball, right? I'm going to take off my Yukon fan blinders. I'm going to put that to the side for the second. I think that this is we have one of the great characters in all of American sports coming back to a sport that needs as many eyeballs and as much attention as possible, right? We have a storyline that's always going to be built in, right? We have a chance for a team to go for a three-peat. I think this is a great, great thing for the sport. I think it's a great thing for all Yukon fans. I think it's great for the Big East, and I love the Big East. And I'm very, very happy right now in this moment. I wish we could have gotten this decision about 4 hours ago, so I could have actually had a productive day. But beyond that, it's a good thing for college basketball. It's a good thing for Yukon. It's a good thing for the Field of 68, man. I ain't complaining. I'm happy today. The sun is shining. The birds are chirping. It is a great afternoon, Goodman.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go more into the fact of Hurley and the decision-making process and how long it took. And according to my sources, he flipped a few times here. And again, I think this thing heated up last Wednesday. And obviously we saw Dan Hurley go to Billy Joel the other night. And that was kind of a reprieve from him because he has wrestled with this decision really since Wednesday. And then he went out obviously to LA. What was that? Friday, and then came back and went to Billy Joel. But this was not an easy decision. And this was not a money decision because obviously the Lakers were paying him probably a little bit more than $70 million for 6 years. So you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of about $12 million a year, where UConn's going to pay him a little over $8 million a year. So if it was a money decision, if it was an ego decision, I think Dan Hurley would have went to the Los Angeles Lakers and challenged himself at the highest possible level. But comfort meant something to him. Also, the fact, obviously, of doing something that hasn't been done since the early 70s by John Wooden's UCLA teams, three-peating. And also, again, just the fact that I do feel like Dan Hurley feels like he can impact kids at this level in college, even with the changing landscape of college basketball, that he can impact kids. The thought, and he talked to Billy Donovan, he talked to some of those other coaches that went the college to NBA route. It is difficult. Listen, if you think Russell Westbrook was running the plays that Billy Donovan called, you're out of your mind back in Oklahoma City. Dan Hurley understood where his role was going to be with this Lakers team and again, wrestled with it and decided that, you know what, staying in Stores is not such a bad thing, even if he's taking a little bit of a hometown discount.
Yeah, and I will say this, Fanta. I think that he has an opportunity to become one of the all-time legends. Like I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but there's a possibility. Like he set himself up to be in a position where we could be talking about him in the conversation for the greatest ever, right? Like if he has a run over the next 15 to 20 years that's anything close to what he's done in the last like 3 or 4 years, we're going to be having conversations about, like, is it Dan Hurley or Coach K? Is it Dan Hurley or John Wooden, right? Like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but there's the possibility
Settle down there.
But you know what? There's a possibility for him to be in that conversation as one of the greatest of all time. And I think that a legacy like that is something that does matter to him when you look at kind of what his pedigree is, when you look at the way that people view his father at the high school level, when you look at the way that people view what his brother was as a player, right? And I think that is something that does he very much is a student of the game and the student of the history of the sport, right? And I do think that is something that matters. If you go to the NBA, your life is going to be different. You're going to be making a little bit more money, right? You're going to have easier summers. You're going to be a little bit less stress-free. The number of texts I got from people in and around the sport of college basketball that were like, the idea that somebody would turn down millions and millions of dollars to be able to not coach in college basketball right now, you got to be a sicko to do that. And I think that Dan Hurley is the kind of sicko that embraces what entails the being successful in college right now and understands that he has an opportunity to like put his stamp on the game of college basketball and the sport of college basketball. And I think that matters to him.
Well, he's already put a stamp on it by winning back-to-back championships. Only 3 coaches in the last 40 years have been able to do that. And that's Mike Krzyzewski, Billy Donovan, and Dan Hurley. So I think, Jeff, your point about this is what we need to dive further into here. This was a fluid situation. And you credit Hurley right off the bat. He kept this extremely, extremely close to the vest. In fact, a lot of the late stuff that came out about this, a lot of theorizing, a lot of puff. The fact is, he kept this close to the vest. You don't fly out to Los Angeles if you're not taking it seriously. This was a serious search, interview, process, all of those things. And this is something that he did weigh because the Lakers offer a lot of different things that are unique and that could be a fresh challenge. But the fact is, he's coming off back-to-back championships. He got Alex Karaban to come back to Yukon. There's a sense of unlimited loyalty there that we have to look at. He recruited Liam McNeely, a guy that's going to be a freshman in college here. Those relationships, the championships, his face, he is the lead face in college basketball. The fact is, in the NBA, Jeff, the coaches are not the face. They're never the face, no matter what kind of personality they have. And I think that matters here.
Well, you know what's crazy?
I don't think Dan Hurley was worried about adapting. We were all worried about Dan Hurley having to adapt and obviously go to a league where it's all about the players instead of the coach. I talked to somebody very close to Hurley, and he said, listen, he can change. He knows, he has to change if he goes to the NBA. He's not going to be up riling up the crowd the whole game, working the officials. Part of the reason he does that is because he feels he needs to do that, whether it's, for his players, for the program or whatnot. But ultimately, he wasn't worried about adapting. That's not what this was about. I think this was more about betting on himself and looking at it and saying, you know what? Even with the landscape of college basketball changing and a lot of coaches feeling it's a complete shit show right now, I'm pretty happy. Now, again, of course you're pretty happy. You just won back-to-back national titles. So while everybody else is bitching and complaining, you're able to get these guys, again, at a hometown discount, a little bit of a discount in the portal. So it makes life a little bit easier for you than it does for all these other coaches.
Yeah, I think that is a very, very important point, right, Jeff? That when UConn is dealing with all this portal stuff right now, they're dealing with, okay, who are we going to turn down? Like, who do we say no to? It's not who are we going to go out and get. It's we can get whoever we want. We got to figure out who it is and who to say no to. And that's a very different level of stress than in saying, I just had 8 guys in from the portal. Yeah. And I have to go out and raise all this money from boosters to be able to find a way to put together enough guys to be able to have practices, right? To be able to play 5-on-5. And like, that's a completely different level of stress than what he's dealing with right now. And I think when you're in that position, it changes the way that you view it. Now, it also helps that he's bringing back that coaching staff that has helped him so much, right? Like, I think it's a different conversation again if there's no guarantee that Kamani Young, Luke Murray, and Tom Moore is going to be on that staff as well. So I think that is certainly something that helped. But the idea that the guy that is coaching in Storrs, Connecticut, has said no to the University of Kentucky and no to the Los Angeles Lakers in the span of 2 months is it's wild, man. Dan Hurley is staying at Yukon. Scott Drew is staying at Baylor. Nate Oates is staying at Alabama. Like, I kind of love that all of these coaches that are kind of in, I don't want to say off the beaten path places, but aren't in the places that typically have the most money and the biggest fan bases and the most prestige, are staying exactly where they are. I love that about college basketball.
Yeah. You don't mess with happy here. And Dan Hurley is very, very happy at Yukon. And why not? Because Connecticut is a different place. It is a blue blood. That fan base is passionate. They produce frivolity. Rob Doster knows them very well. That sound you hear is jubilation in stores, and rightly so, because you're talking about, again, this was the LA Lakers calling. And no matter what you think of the Lakers, and there's been lots of narratives out there, that brand in sport matters. It carries a different level of weight. But I think, Jeff, in deciding here to return to Yukon, Hurley, he's been the perfect match. I would say this. He will never be a more perfect match than he is as the head coach of the Connecticut Huskies.
Yeah, I mean, this was two great choices. I mean, that ultimately what it comes down to is you can't go wrong with either one of these. You know, if I had told Dan Hurley, you know, when I first met him at St. Benedict's, by the way, I don't know if you knew this, his first year at St. Benedict's, he played against LeBron James. His coaching St. Benedict's, he played against LeBron at St. Vincent St. Mary. So it would have been kind of weird to have him coach LeBron now at 40 years old. But it was two great choices. The question I have still is, and I can't wait to get Dan, I will get him on at some point here in the next week before he hits the beach. But, you know, to me, it's, all right, how much did it matter going, first of all, West Coast, LA, you don't really know it. You're not comfortable. You got to bring Andrea with you. And again, I'm not sure she's really built now, maybe for a 4-day drive.
Hold on. You can't phrase it like that. You got to bring your wife with you.
I didn't mean you have to bring Andrea with them. I meant you're going to bring Andrea with you, the Jersey girl, to LA, and how is that going to work? But I do think there's part of this too, that where the LA Lakers, there's some concern with the LA Lakers, obviously with their roster, with their flexibility, with LeBron James being 40 years old, with potentially bringing in Bronny, with AD and LeBron being, you know, brittle, and LeBron being 40, and who knows how long his body will hold up. All of that, you just wonder, it is the LA Lakers. It is one of the best jobs you're going to potentially get if you're Dan Hurley. But ultimately, how much did you worry about, like, okay, if this had been LeBron 5 years ago, you might have been like, hey, you know what? I can't turn that shit down. But right now, it's a little bit different because you might get, first of all, you might get LeBron leaving in a week. You could get him leaving in a week because he's pissed off that you're not J.J. Redick and he wanted J.J. Redick. You don't know how this thing is going to play out.
You know what? The thing that stood out to me more than anything else throughout this process is, like, look, I watch the NBA. I love the NBA playoffs. I think that when you get the highest level of basketball and the best players in the world competing at 110% for 48 minutes, there's no better spectacle in sport than when those guys are playing, right? I'm not as ingrained in the NBA as I am in college. And the thing that surprised me in talking to people through this process was, like, the Lakers job is not viewed as a great job in the NBA. Like, there's people that say it's probably not even that good of a job. Like, Goodman, we've talked about this before. It's not like they're not rolling in cash the way that the Mavericks are with a Mark Cuban or the Clippers are with
Steve Ballmer.
Ballmer, yeah, Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer.
Yeah, and that was the thing that.
This is a lot of money for them to pay a coach, Rob. This is a ton of money to go 6 years and, you know, about $12 million a year, a little bit more than $70 million. That's a lot of money for LA. And again, like, who knows what his staff would have looked like? And I wonder, again, he probably won't talk openly about things of this nature, but Dan Hurley was going to get paid. We know the players for the Lakers get paid, but I'm not sure he would have had the money for his staff that he might have needed to get some of these big-time guys.
Now, speaking of money, Dave Borges, who is our friend and does a great job covering Yukon, caught up with Governor Ned Lamont, Connecticut governor, and Lamont told him that Hurley, they'll make the effort for Hurley to be these are his words, the highest paid college coach. So let's turn to that for a moment here, Jeff, because that, as he's returning, what can you share at this moment, Jeff, on what that looks like between Yukon and Hurley now that he is staying?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've got an offer on the table. 6 years, about $50 million. And again, the hard part with UConn is they don't have football money. So there's kind of a limit on what they can do before you start hurting the athletic programs, right? You're taking so much money from a program that just doesn't have it like some of these other schools, whether it's the Texases or even the Arizonas going to the Big 12, Carolina, they just have a different level of money because of football revenue in the leagues that they're in right now. So, if he's got to be the highest paid coach in the country, well, that means he's going to make 10 million plus, because that's what Bill Self makes right now. John Calipari is number 2 this year, and I believe he's at 8.5 this year because of a signing bonus, but he'll go down to 7.5 the year after this year. So I think Dan Hurley right now will probably be paid. I think he'll be the second highest paid coach, is my guess, with this contract in college basketball. And again, the hard part, if you're Dan Hurley, is if you milk UConn for too much money, it may hurt you on the other end. It may hurt you with some of the NIL dollars, or it may hurt some of the other programs.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, right? Once we kind of get to this level of revenue sharing in college basketball, a lot of that money that typically goes to some of these coaches is going to end up going towards paying the salaries of some of these players and paying making sure that you can get the guys you want. Now, I along those same lines, you got to remember that when you're able to develop players the way that Hurley has the last 2 years, when you are able to get guys to their ultimate goal of playing in the NBA, where they will make real money. I'm not saying that the money they're going to make in NIL isn't real money, but when you are able to kind of get them to that level to reach their dream while also having success at the college level. How many guys in the transfer portal saw Cam Spencer this year go from being someone that was like, there's a guy on Rutgers that hit a couple game winners, but like, I don't really know anything about him, to being he was in the conversation for Big East Player of the Year. He's going to end up playing in the NBA at some point in the next 2 seasons, right? I think everybody sees that and like, yeah, let me get there, even if it means I'm making $300,000 less in NIL this season than I would in another place.
Can I hop in the car here and go on a soapbox for 45 seconds? This is
only 45. That'll
win.
be the shortest soapbox segment in the history of John Fanta's career covering college basketball. So go ahead. Take as much time as you need, Johnny Fanta.
I'm not going to take as much time as we need. I really want to know how your ham and cheese sandwich was for lunch, but that's neither here nor there. This is a massive win for Connecticut. This is a huge victory for the Big East Conference. And this is a glorious W for college basketball. This injects a shot in the arm for a sport that has recently said goodbye to Coach K, Roy, Jay, and John Calipari at Kentucky. College basketball needed this news. It got this news, and the face of the sport, had he left, you're talking about another question in the sport that we cover and we love about who is the face now of college basketball. Dan Hurley has never shied away from the fact that he'd like to coach in the NBA someday. Regardless of what you think about the Lakers' job, how good it is, or if it's overrated, regardless of what you think, you can't deny its brand impact on the level of the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Yankees. But hell, the Yukon brand matters. What Hurley built matters. Going for a three-peat is historic. That has significant impact and matters. This is what college basketball needed, and who thought it would happen in June? But it cannot be overstated what kind of victory this is for college hoops.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Fanta, everything you just said is 100% correct, right? And I do believe he will be the face of college basketball, mostly because he understands how to kind of develop this character aspect where he wants that attention. Like there's a level of it. It's not. I don't think it's a coincidence that you see him showing up at like WWE events and watching these guys, and then going out in public and kind of playing the heel. Like he's embraced that, and I do think that there is a level of. There's something about guys from the Northeast, guys from New York, guys from Jersey City that don't mind being the villain, that don't mind being the enemy. And when they win, don't mind rubbing your face in it. And I think that he's got that. And I think that that plays well with his fan base. And I think that it creates a level of dislike with some of the other fan bases in and around college basketball. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. If we're going to have 3 more years of Dan Hurley versus Rick Pitino in the Big East, like, sign me up for that theater, man. Like, who doesn't want to see that? It'll be awesome. And I will just add, Phantom, Billy Donovan said no, took the Orlando Magic job in 2007, came back to school, coached 8 more years at Florida, and then got hired by Oklahoma. It was Oklahoma City, right? In 2015, after leaving Florida to a 16-17 season where they didn't even make the NIT. So the NBA, he's always going to have an opportunity there. You're not always going to have an opportunity to 3.
Jeff, 2 thoughts here. Number 1, think about this. Just over 2 years ago, Dan Hurley loses to Chris Jans in New Mexico State and Teddy Allen. Yeah, Teddy Allen and New Mexico State in Buffalo, a nightmare day. A nightmare day. Just over 2 years later, everything's on the table for him. He's king of the hill in college basketball. What a difference that makes. And number 2, Jeff, can you say in your reporting here, because you know what the immediate reaction is for widespread? Well, he played this like a fiddle. He just used this to then push the Yukon offer up. Can we do some reasoning here on that? Because this was not just let me go out to LA and have a vacation.
No, I think, honestly, they had to convince him to go to LA for that meeting. I don't think initially he really was all into it. But again, the more he thought about it, the more he thought it's an opportunity that you can't pass up. And you'll regret, at least if you don't look into it. Now, Dan Hurley still may regret this one. He may regret this one in 2 years if UConn dips a little bit. I don't think they're going to dip that far that he'll regret it. But he could. He absolutely could regret not coaching the Los Angeles Lakers because, again, okay, yeah, there'll be other NBA jobs. You think he's going to Portland? Do you think he's going to some of these other jobs that are going to open up that, the Detroits of the world? No, he's not going to those. There's only a handful of either, the jobs, the franchise jobs, the Celtics, Lakers, or the jobs like Oklahoma City, Minnesota, that have the talent to be able to compete at the highest level right now due to their current rosters. So it's going to be interesting to see if in 10, 15 years down the road that when you talk to Dan Hurley and you ask him, hey, do you regret? Because I think Tom Izzo regrets not giving the NBA a chance. I do. He had a couple opportunities. I think absolutely the window's closed for Tom Izzo at this point in his career. But I think he probably, if he had a chance to do it all over again, he might have said, you know what? I probably should have taken a shot there with the Cavs or somebody.
Right, can I just I want to clarify something for you. I think that Dan Hurley would take the opportunity to coach the Detroit Pistons. I think he'd take the opportunity to go to Portland and coach Trailblazers. I think Dan Hurley would. But in your so eloquent words, Jeff, he's got to bring Andrea with him, and that's the one who's going to make the decision on where
maybe he doesn't.
Go to live.
Or maybe Andrea stays behind in Jersey. She goes back to Jersey City.
If Dan Hurley goes to coach the Detroit Pistons, I am positive that Andrea Hurley is going to be staying behind. I also do have a very important update. Very important update. Breaking news here on the Field of 68. We have very, very important news to share. This is coming directly from the Yukon men's basketball office. Their 2 p.m. practice has officially started. The 2 p.m. practice that got bumped back from noon, and so they are officially practicing now at their new practice facility. So
this is, I mean, I just can't overstate in a world of college basketball. Like let's be honest, guys. When this comes out, and even this morning on some national shows, not going to name any names or whatnot. I'm not into that, but like you heard people saying, this is a sign of the doomsday in college basketball. Come on.
Yeah, that's
this
overstated.
guy's been that's so ridiculous, Jeff.
Well,
it
listen,
really is.
I will say this, but it depends on who you are, right? Dan Hurley is a different dude. I've known this guy for 20 plus years. He's a different dude. If some other guy's got this opportunity, like if Nate Oates got this opportunity, I think he'd be long gone. He'd be in LA. He'd walk from Tuscaloosa to Alabama. So I do think there are plenty of coaches that are at a point that they would have said, you know what? I'm out of here right now with the way the portal and NIL and revenue sharing coming and all the question marks and concerns going on in college basketball and college sports in general. If this were on the table, I think Dan Hurley is not – you can't make an overarching opinion based on what Dan Hurley did here, because he is a different, unique dude that we may never see again. I've never seen anything like him, never been anything around anybody like him in all my years of covering not just basketball, but every sport at every level. I mean, this dude is the way his mind works is different. And I wonder still, did he ultimately make this decision while in the weirdo room?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I want to go down that road, although the weirdo room now could have some updates to it and all that.
Yeah.
Here's what I do know.
It might have a poster. It might have a poster of LeBron in it right now. We don't know.
It might have a poster. Look, Dan Hurley said no to LeBron James and said yes to what they call the basketball capital of the world. The fact is, though, the question that we asked going in was, how much control were Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss willing to give Dan Hurley? Because the counter to that, Jeff, and then Rob will get back to you. The counter to that, Jeff, is he has all the control in the world at Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he obviously wasn't going to have as much. But I am told Rob Pelinka is not a guy that was going to meddle with everything. Rambis probably not going to meddle as much. You know, I think he would have had a fair amount of control. But again, it's different. You are the show in college when you're the head coach. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, how you want. And in the NBA, that's just not going to fly, even if Pelinka doesn't meddle. Like, you still got LeBron there. You still got LeBron. You got to acquiesce to him and make sure he's happy. And the moment LeBron is not happy, I mean, you might not make it through the full season. Like, there's a chance. If you piss LeBron out this year, there's a chance, a real chance, that you don't make it through the entire – like, if they started out, you're telling me if they don't start out the season and they're, 12-40 at the All-Star break, or whatever it is, 20 and 30 at the All-Star break, he could be gone. LeBron could easily go like, this dude doesn't know what he's gone. Latest college guy. And then Hurley's thinking to himself, what that? Now he gets all that guaranteed money. All the NBA coaching money is guaranteed, guys. So he pulls all that, $70 million, but still, it's a roll of the dice. It is a roll of the dice, but I thought it was one that Dan Hurley might roll it right now. I really did.
Yeah. I think that there is a level of, it's not just the control, right? But it's how difficult it is to get players in at the NBA. Like, it's not like you're going out and recruiting, right? It's not like you can sit there and say, we have the best pitch. This is the best system. This is the best place for you to be and be able to get it done. So much of it is the financial stuff. And when you already have two stars locked up to deals that are as big as what LeBron James and Anthony Davis are going to be on, like, there's a salary cap, right? And when you're in college, so much of the success of these programs is about getting in the right recruits and developing them and giving them 2 or 3 years, right? It's about bringing in the right transfers that fit what you want to do and be able to give them a year or two to be able to grow. It's a very different thing when it comes to roster building in the NBA. And I also think you said this earlier, Jeff, and I think that it's relevant in that I think he enjoys the working on the growth and development of teenagers that come in that leave his program as young men, right? I think that's part of it's the teaching aspect of it. And it's so cliche. And sometimes I push back on that stuff when it comes to college coaching, but it's like the development of human beings and not just basketball players. Because look, when you are watching your father in Jersey City take all of these kids into St. Anthony's, coach them up, teach them up, get them off to college, right? Like, some of that kind of gets ingrained in you where that becomes something that is is part of like who he is as a basketball coach. And I don't think that works in the NBA. Like we could ask like Henson and Randolph about this and other guys that have, and Tyler Hansbrough, guys that have played in the league, they could probably speak better to it than we can. But when you are in the NBA, like you're showing up for practice and then you're going home and then you're showing up for the shoot arounds and then you're going home and then you're showing up for the games and you're going home. A lot of these guys have wives. Yeah. And a lot of these guys have they have wives, they have lives, they have families, they have business obligations, they have things that they're doing outside. Like that is just part of their day. Whereas when you are in college, it is about basketball, and basketball, right? And it's about the program and it is about the team and it is about being together and it's about that family dynamic and that family aspect. And I think that is something that is, I don't think you can replicate that in the NBA, right? And that's, you're asking for a lot to step into that because you're basically giving up all of the stuff that he's learned throughout his life. And I feel like I'm playing armchair psychologist, and I feel like we do that a lot with Dan Hurley because he probably has spent a lot of money on
so that leads me to my next point. Hey, Rob, that leads me to my next question. And I'll ask both of you guys this. How much do you think the nerves and thinking about, man, it's still the Lakers. I'm good here. I'm confident I can win. I've got this formula, so to speak, in college. And 2 years ago, I was in danger of being on the hot seat. I was a year away from being on the hot seat, and a lot of Yukon fans kind of wanted me gone. And now I've got people where they love me, right? The adulation that comes along with it now. It's fairly new for Dan Hurley. And like he spoke openly about mental health issues that he's gone through and continues to battle. And you wonder how much going out to LA and thinking about the nerves, fan of like, do I really want to do this? I'm finally doing so well in where I'm at in my life.
Hold on, let me before you respond, Fan, I do want to just add one thing onto that. When I had Andrea on in I think it was in February of this year, she told me how in January of 2023, like towards the end of that stretch where they lost 6 out of 8, where they went from being undefeated to being like, we might get fired. Like he was in a horrible place mentally towards the end of that year because he was reading too much stuff on Twitter. He was paying attention to the noise too much. He was paying attention to the officials. Like it was all kind of beating down on him. And that's at Yukon, right? Yukon has a loud fan base on social media. They have a whole bunch of different beat writers at a whole bunch of the papers that are in the Northeast, right? They have some national attention because, I grew up in Connecticut. Borzello lives a stone's throw away from Connecticut. Matt Norlander lives in Connecticut. There's a lot of people in that area that cover the sport nationally, right? It is completely different in terms of the amount of heat that you would get if you are with the Lakers. And I mean, Goodman, you can probably speak to this better than I can and better than Fan. I don't know if you've talked to Dan at all, Fanta, but I feel like there was probably a moment of like self-realization in there where it's like, I don't think that it would be good for me to go to a place where every morning after we lose, there are going to be 2 hours of Stephen A. Smith up there on First Take, yelling and screaming and saying all of this different stuff about me. And if he isn't able to tune out the noise when it's us and you got Stephen A. on First Take for 2 hours and you got the Pat McAfee show coming up after that for 2 hours and you got all of the different people yelling about it, like, go ahead.
I would just say he heard about it though. He hears and sees what people were saying in recent days. And there are people out there who were saying, I don't know if he can adapt. I don't know if he's this. Well, I think in his mind, he was thinking, well, the only way that I shut those people up is the same way I've done it before in my career. Yeah, I could do that. And maybe there comes a day where he does want to do that. But when you win 2 in a row, and he has said this to several media members nationally, in whatever appearance it might be, that the only thing on anybody's mind off winning 2 was to find a way to win 3. If you had won 1, and then this year, you lose in the middle of the NCAA tournament, that you cannot not give that as a reason here as to why he's staying, because he looks at it as, I can be in the same sentence as John Wooden, where if I go to the Los Angeles Lakers again, when you're a coach in the NBA, you're only going to get blamed Like
When you
very
don't have enough
rarely
bullets.
are coaches
You
getting,
don't have enough
our
bullets
coaches
right
getting
now. If you had enough bullets, it'd be different.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I just think that the amount of murkiness with the Lakers, 7 coaches in 15 years, a lot of turnover, and a lot of uncertainty with that organization right now, lent itself to say what Dan Hurley's certain about is that at Yukon, he's king of the world. That at Yukon, he's going to get compensated as much as the top guys are. And that at Yukon, he's got a fan base, he's got passion, he's got an energy about this job. He gets to go in there to work. And as Rob just said, he's happy as a clam. There's nothing to be upset about. His son, Dan Jr., works in New York, has a great job. Andrew, could be following in his footsteps, whatever. He's got a happy family, a happy wife, a happy life, and he's got what he believes to be the best situation in college basketball between that fan base, that venue, their TV exposure. Remember, they're on big broadcast TV a ton. And off this news, you best believe Fox executives are saying, we just won. We're going to put Dan Hurley on primetime every weekend we want to. To me, Jeff, it is a case of when you have so many questions, say he takes the Lakers job, how many different things would we be analyzing? You're back to stage 1. Nobody in the NBA cares what you've done in college when you start 1 of 82. He's mastered this now. And for a guy that has dealt with struggles, there's something to be said about achieving nirvana.
Listen, there are some similarities when Brad Stevens went to the Celtics. There are some similarities, right? He didn't win 2 national titles, but at Butler, what he had done was incredible.
Probably
right?
more
Getting
impressive. Let's be honest.
Right. Probably was more impressive. Getting the 2 national title games at Butler was insane back to back. And he goes to the Celtics, and their roster isn't great when he took over. Not great, but he gave it a shot now. And I just think the bottom line to this, I think as much as anything, is if it had been Boston, which obviously it's not going to be, but I wonder how much going 3,000 miles away affected him to bring Andrea, to bring his family. Now, obviously, his father, they could have gotten Bob Sr. a spot in Palm Springs, and he would have been halfway between Dan and Bobby, right? He could have gone back and forth and seen Bobby at Arizona State, gone to see Dan in L.A. So it could have worked, and you can buy whatever you want, but you know what you can't buy? You can't buy happiness, and it's true.
Look, you know what? I have sources on this. Okay, this is a very well sourced.
You have no sources. You don't have sources.
Very well sourced.
Jeff, high school sources exist. As we've
these aren't high school sources. These are very, very well placed, high level sources that I have in this report that I'm about to make. The reason why Dan is coming back to college is because when he was at that Billy Joel concert, he ran into somebody there. And what happened was, according to my sources, is he saw that somebody and he was like, if I take the LA job, I will never run into this person at a Billy Joel concert ever again. John, do you know who that person was?
Yeah. Robert, we're not going down that road. He saw Billy Joel and he saw the guitar. Yeah, I was up a level. The fact is, he's not moving out.
Wave to him. Fanta wave.
Yeah, all right.
Bennett was in the upper deck. He was like, I don't have Lakers money yet. Nice to see you down there, Dan.
Sing us a song. If you're in Connecticut, you're singing, you're dancing, you're happy. We will keep you locked. As Jeff said, we'll make every effort to get Dan Hurley.
Before we go,
Go
here's
ahead.
my question. I'm going to just play a little game here. If Dan Hurley had left to go to the Lakers, who was going to be your pick, Fanta, to succeed Dan Hurley in stores? Who would have been your guy? Who do you think David Benedict would have ultimately hired to come on, Fanta.
Bye-bye.
Don't fail on me.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Who do you got?
Hey, James.
Who do you got?
James Calhoun. Goodbye. So long,
Kamani.
everybody. Thank you. I got to
Give the
go.
job to Kamani. Hey,
Going.
how about this?
Bye.
Mount
Bye.
Laurel champions, baby. Morristown shootout champions. Yeah, one of us won something this weekend, Goodman. You won nothing. Let's go. Mount Laurel, baby. 8U. 8U Morristown tournament champions right there. Come get it. Date.